The content discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or mortgage advice. Always consult with a licensed professional before making any decisions regarding mortgages or financial matters.
Welcome to the Canadian Mortgage Show. Here are mortgage professionals Alex Pang and Alex Shanks to cut through the BS and educate Canadians on all things mortgages and real estate.
What's the current state of BC real estate economy?
It's not the market we were expecting. So when I was, this time of year last year, we were experiencing a real upswing in activity. Sales across BC in like October, November, December last year they had been very weak because the Bank of Canada had been raising rates and started cutting rates, markets started coming back. And then we get hit with like an uncertainty shock from tariffs in the early part of this year. Activity absolutely cratered, especially in the lower mainland. And now we're just starting to see things come back. So outside of the lower mainland, sales activity is actually getting back to where it was at the end of 2024. So around like a 10-year average for sales.
Welcome to episode 59 of the Canadian Mortgage Show. Alex Pang here alongside my co-host Alex Shanks. Alex, we have a special guest on today. He is the chief economist from the BC Real Estate Association and self-proclaimed Seattle Mariners fan, Brendon Ogmundson. Brendon, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, I mean, we have a Toronto fan over in Shanks there, so I mean,
just come over the light side, cheer for the Mariners tonight. You'll feel better about yourself.
Yeah, I'm on the neutral side. Maybe I'm the whole BC inferiority complex. The whole Rodgers and Bell, we get shoved all Leafs, Raptors, and Blue Jays down our throat all the time. I'm a Seahawks fan. I mean, I've only cheered for the Raptors when they had Vince Carter. I mean, we had the Grizzlies for 6 years, and I'm not cheering for the Grizzlies now, but I mean, my team's Golden State, so obviously Steph Curry, but I mean, Mariners, I mean, I'm more on the BC than it's not Canada's team, it's Canada's only team.
I don't care. I was raised to hate all Toronto sports, so even this Blue Jays team is actually very likable. So they're pretty difficult. It's easy to hate the Yankees. This seems really hard to hate. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is awesome. I remember cheering for his dad when he was on the Expos. So they're a likable team. I hate the Raptors. I don't watch hockey, but I'm sure I would hate the Maple Leafs. I hate the Blue Jays. I'm sure if I watched a lot of CFL, I would hate the Argonauts. Just not a fan of the place or the sports teams, but yeah.
Is it their specific reason, or are you just West Coast blood? It's like, hey, whoever's on the West Coast, I'll cheer for them, even if it's not Canadian.
West Coast, Best Coast. But I was just raised. My dad just like indoctrinated me at a young age, and it just stuck. So yeah, and Alex Pang. This must be difficult that you guys are both named Alex. Are you old enough to remember like the Grizzlies? Like, because I was every Grizzlies game. All right. I'm a huge, my sort of sports, rankings, for the sports I like the most, probably basketball number one, and then football, then baseball. So yeah, but I call myself a sports orphan because obviously growing up, I was a Bulls fan because everyone's just on the bandwagon right away, during the Jordan years. But then with the Grizzlies, they got taken away. I was a Sonics fan. It's amazing that I even cheer for any NBA teams because all the NBA has done is break my heart. But it's a great sport, so how can you abandon it? So then my kids got very into basketball when Steph Curry was coming up. So then I was like, I watched so many Warriors games, and they play a fun brand of basketball, so it's always fun.
Yeah, I'm a Steph Curry fan. I was talking with my wife whether we've actually made a couple trips down to Portland to watch the Warriors play the Blazers because we couldn't afford the trip out to Oakland or San Fran, and man, maybe because they were playing exciting basketball, it's like everyone's Warriors because they're just letting a rip from center court, and we were even saying are we a Steph Curry fan or are we a Golden State Warriors fan?
Yeah,
right. If Steph moved to another team,
you're gonna scroll. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
if the schedule works out, what a very fun trip to do. We did this with the kids one year. Is to go. It's usually with December. Go to go to Portland for a Blazers game, And then if there's the Seahawks game the next day, just drive to Seattle the next morning for the Seahawks. It's great weekend. Highly recommend it.
And if the Canucks are playing the Kraken too, triple header it, or Washington Huskies football or something like that. Make it a quadruple header or something.
That's cool. I mean, I always like to do Huskies football game and then the Seahawks. Like that's definitely my favorite that way. It just, I haven't gone to Seattle since Kraken's been there, but yeah, trying to get a hockey game in there too, it'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, without all of the other, problems about going to the United States these days, but one day it'll be a fun trip again.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. Brendon, we brought you on. I mean, this is a loaded question here. What's the current state of the BC real estate economy? Is this a 15-minute answer for you there?
Yeah, I don't give short answers. So, it's not the market we were expecting. So when I was, this time of year last year, we were experiencing a real upswing in activity. Sales across BC in like October, November, December last year they had been very weak because the Bank of Canada had been raising rates and started cutting rates. Markets started coming back. And then we get hit with like an uncertainty shock from tariffs in the early part of this year. Activity absolutely cratered, especially in the lower mainland. And now we're just starting to see things come back. So outside of the lower mainland, sales activity is actually getting back to where it was at the end of 2024. So around like a 10-year average for sales. And in Metro Vancouver is slowly coming back. We're probably still about 10 or 15% below where we were at the end of 2024, but a lot better than the down 30% that we were through the summer months. So encouraging signs that activity is picking up. Rate cuts have helped. It's a lot of pent-up demand. Affordability is still going to be a huge challenge, but I'm cautiously optimistic about how we're going to finish this year and then head into 2026.
Is there, like based on your answer, do you get a different answer between the resale and the pre-sale market? Because pre-sales are not doing very well right now.
No, I mean, and it's tough because like the pre-sale market is a little bit opaque. Unless you work in that sector, unless you work in development, unless you work in like real estate marketing, there's not great data on pre-sales. So it's kind of hard, to track things the same way. But just anecdotally and, from talking to developers and everything else, like that market is really challenged right now. And for good reason. We've made it very, very difficult to be an investor in BC, and that market really relies on people who are what we want to be investors. And now is a very, very difficult time for real estate investors.
Yeah, and it's obviously with like the BC developers wanting to sign, like they have the open letter out to the government asking them to relax like the foreign buyer ban, like on the BC or like real estate side of like, is there discussions like on your guys' side that way there, Brendon, with saying like, hey, should we be letting the foreign buyers back in to buy? Like what's the discussions that way?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one, it's not up to the provincial government right now whether or not they allow foreign buyers at all, because there's a federal foreign buyer ban. If you'd have to have the federal government drop that ban, then we'd be back to where we were when did they put in the ban? Was it 2 years ago? 2022, 2023? Before the ban, when non-residents were allowed to buy, but they paid a pretty hefty foreign buyer tax in BC, 20%. So one, I'd like to see them drop the foreign buyer ban in Canada, or at least, like more accurately, I'd like to adopt the Australia model where non-residents are allowed to purchase new housing or pre-sales, but can't buy existing housing stock, so can't participate in the resale market. That would allow us to find them, at least some of the necessary financing we need to build the housing supply that the province and the federal government wants to build. Really difficult to access the capital necessary to build the 600,000 units the province would like to see built over the next decade if we can only access financing through domestic sources of capital. It's not going to be possible.
Yeah, and they're just not. Again, we always talk about the pendulum swing of like, hey, we let too many people buy, we had rates too low for too long, and now we've just gone the other way, and we're way up here, and it's like, let's try and get something in the middle here. And like you said there, Brendan, allowing people to buy like the new homes, like that's where it's like, hey, we're not going to allow them to buy all the other places. Like, and again, a lot of these companies, they can buy if they're also buying commercial or they're buying in a business. And that's where it's like, okay, the big people, they're able to get in and buy and say pretty much screw you to the little guys. And that's where like we haven't really stopped the like the more wealthy people. It's more, hey, the people that could be the mom and pops from other countries, that's the big ones we've really heard.
Well, just the reality of it, though, that the government has to eventually recognize, like their target right now is to build 600,000 units over the next 10 years, which is going to require, just for on the construction side, is going to require anywhere between 200 and 300 billion dollars in construction costs. So 20 to 30 billion dollars a year. They haven't said how they're going to raise that capital. It has to come from either, in the way we build in Canada and BC is through pre-sale financing. So you can't even get Brendon if you're not going to sell pre-sales. So we need the investors for pre-sales, or we need to really open up like the rental side to encouraging pension funds and REITs. But we kind of demonize that as financialization, right? Even though the CMHC did a great study on REITs and their impacts on rents. Like REITs in Vancouver, I think only own about 6% of apartment buildings. And when a REIT takes over, there's no statistical, change in rents, in those markets. The CMHC did a great, really careful study of that. So, there's no truth to the idea that, corporations come in and jack up everybody's rents. So, we can stop demonizing that source of capital as well. We're going to have to, somehow through, again, either tapping big pools of institutional money or smaller investors are going to be needed to finance what our own supply targets are. It's nice to have targets, but you have to figure out a way to actually hit them, right?
That's what we find. We have these targets, and this is the federal, this is provincial. It's like, maybe let's choose a number that we could, like, even if we could get to 60% of it, 50%, oh my God, like that would be such a win.
Well, it's funny too, the CMHC's affordability target for BC is, or for everywhere, but for BC, it's 2019 levels of affordability, which I would joke, like, remember the housing utopia of 2019 where no one had any issues with housing affordability, right? It used to be 2004.
That's they were
and that was like, well, that's now completely ridiculous. So they changed it to 2019, which is still like, okay, I'm not sure I guess it's better than where we're at now, but I don't think anyone's gonna be satisfied necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, mentioning about the whole Australian, they relaxed their foreign buyer ban. Like, have you tracked the progress of that? Did they follow the same trajectory where they did a full ban and they kind of released the reins a little bit? Like,
it's a good question. It was quite a few years ago that they did it, and they have huge affordability problems in Australia too. It's not like it's a fix, right? Again, it's just what is your goal? Like, if we want to get stuff built, then that requires capital, and we can't access enough capital domestically. So it's not so much like this isn't a way to solve affordability in the short term, but it is a way to build the amount of housing that we need to at least get price growth under control over the long term, right? And
yeah,
in Australia, like, hasn't been, obviously hasn't solved their affordability issues, but I don't think they have the same building targets though either. Like, I'm not sure if they're trying to be as aggressive. Like, they did this in New Zealand with massive rezoning in Auckland, and as a result, we're able to build a lot more like missing middle housing, especially, and massively slow down growth in rents. So it's worked. Like, this type of building has worked in a very small scale in a place like Auckland. Can you do that on a massive scale? To do so, you would need a lot more capital.
We actually talked about it in previous pods where you mentioned it on Dustin Woodhouse with your conversation with him, and it makes sense from a logistical economic standpoint. But like you said earlier, I think foreign buyers have been kind of demonized as one of the root problems of affordability.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we kind of need it, but I don't think the public would want it from a this perspective.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
It, still things like the foreign buyer ban, the foreign buyer tax, everything polls extremely well. And if you survey people even now, like what is the primary cause of the housing crisis in BC, and you'll get if not the majority, a very large portion still saying foreign investors, foreign capital, right? Even though the if you look at like transaction data, the share of non-resident buyers in the market's less than, I mean, it's obviously since the foreign buyer ban, less than 0.5%, but even before the foreign buyer ban between 2017 and 2020 during the pandemic, before the pandemic, it was about 1.5%.
Yeah.
And then basically fell to zero during the pandemic, and then we had a foreign buyer ban, so it's pretty close to zero. Notably, during the pandemic, when we had no foreign buyers and almost no immigration, two of the things the public would point to as the main causes of housing unaffordability, we had record high home sales and record high home prices. So I thought that might put that whole issue to bed, but it hasn't. I was on the CBC, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned that we probably need some foreign investment to finance our housing supply goals, and immediately got hate mail in my inbox about it. So like, this is a policy the public really likes, and the government knows that. So they're probably not going to bend on it anytime soon.
And it's such a so they're not going to bend on it. Even if we, like, let's say we could prove to them, hey, look at what Auckland did, and hey, this is where they were able to reduce it. And I mean, we've seen even in Calgary, like rent prices are dropping, and that is like from the multifamily, like buildings that they're doing there. It doesn't work in Vancouver because the freaking land is too expensive. So like, you'll never build that type of things here. My only thoughts is the government's gonna have to step in and buy some of these pre-sales to make them into government like rentals. Like that's the only way I get. It's mind blowing, but I mean, we'll see who buys them.
Yeah. There's obviously all kinds of issues. Like, even the idea of doubling construction is, we did some work. Yeah, we did some work a couple years ago, maybe last year, just to figure out what would it actually take, right? Because like, it's nice to have a target, but we found that it would require adding about 130,000 more people to the construction workforce at a time when about 20% of the construction workforce in BC is 55 or over, so set to retire. So we got to backfill that and then add another 130,000 workers. And then on top of that, we'd also have to figure out some way to squeeze a ton more productivity out of each hour worked in the construction sector. Right now, productivity in construction is like zero, and projected to be zero by the Bank of Canada over the next 5 years. We need to get some kind of productivity growth, meaning just like, how do we get more efficient at building? And that probably means getting cheap lucky labor technology somehow. Well, not cheap labor, but like, using maybe AI stuff is cheap. Using AI to read permits or to issue permits, read plans and issue permits. So it doesn't take 9 months, a year to get one thing reviewed and then sent back, another 9 months on top of that, right? Maybe we need to like do parts of construction differently. Like, how much stuff can we do offsite with manufactured construction? Again, when you talk to developers about that, they're like optimistic a little bit about like that technology, but also there's huge problems we just don't have the manufacturing capacity, and investing in that capacity is really risky. Because housing is very cyclical, right? You're not going to invest, $1 billion in a manufacturing plant somewhere, and then when the market, drops out and you have no business, and there goes your investment. So that's part of why the federal government is trying to jumpstart that sector with its build program. It's about $13 billion they've announced.
And I mean, like, do we think, like, for one, like, you're not going to get modulars in Vancouver, like those aren't going to be installed there, like, and that's where I like to, like, I mean, we go back to, I always like to use Winnipeg as like a reference of like when they when they brought in the war stuff of like, hey, we're going to build certain houses. And I mean, Vancouver BC had all the miss and middle stuff. The houses that they chose don't even fit for the infrastructure. But that's not the question here. Is us doing modulars, government financing that, like, that's for maybe these outskirts like cities and everything. But like, we need to fix like,
you've seen have you seen like mass timber? Like, I watched like YouTube videos on like using mass timber, and you can build that up to 6, 8 stories. Like, so not, not high rises, but, also like maybe we don't need nothing but high rises. Maybe we just need to rezone and have a lot more 4 and 6 story kind of walk up, single stair egress like they have in Europe. They have great layouts with back to front windows and 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and like what we, here would be impossible to fit in because of the requirements for staircases and all that kind of thing that people who design these things know way more about than I do. But like, if we just had more, like, we could legalize types of housing here that people could actually live in, even if it's small, but at least it's livable, multiple bedrooms, that would make way more sense.
Well, I mean, that's like the problem we have is like these suites. Like you can buy a place downtown and you're
Right.
gonna live in a 400 square foot suite. You
Yeah.
can't have a family in that. It's like you need to have like at least a
And then
2 bedroom, 2 bath. Like that's really even for someone to start to grow a family.
then you get to the cost of delivery crisis. Like, what does it cost to build a 2 bedroom apartment then? Or 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom places? Like, it's just so expensive because of development charges, because of construction costs, because of delays with permitting, everything. We've just made it so expensive to build. It's really hard to build anything that's affordable.
It honestly looks like we need all parties to kind of participate, where we've documented that 30% of any new build is involved in any sort of government fees, development costs, and all that stuff. And, in order for governments and municipalities to participate, we essentially not take the whole rent-through effect, but the Walmart Costco effect, lower the fees, increase the volume kind of thing, right? They're building stuff no one wants to buy. It was all slated for investment Airbnb stuff, and it was profitable until the party stopped, right? No one, again, Alex Shanks, no one wants to buy a 400 square foot condo to live in. It's all, investment.
Even on the rental side and on certainly on the purchasing side, the people that could live in a 400 square foot apartment, usually like single people, young single people, can't afford it.
Yeah.
Because they're really expensive. It's not like it's 400 square feet, but it's super affordable. It's 400 square feet and it still rents for $2,500 a month or something, right? So it's the worst of both worlds. It's too small and it's really expensive.
Yeah. And I mean, so this is one that you did talk about on Dustin Woodhouse's podcast as well, is should we bring in 50-year amortization? We can't bring the prices down. How do we make something more affordable?
Yeah.
Take on more debt, right?
Right. On the cost of delivery side, I think it's getting development charges down, and that's a really difficult thing because someone has to pay for infrastructure. If you're going to build, someone has to pay for new sewage, new utilities, and all that stuff that we obviously would need. The way we do it right now is putting all of the burden of those development charges on new development instead of on the wider property tax base, because obviously raising property taxes is a pretty good way to get voted out if you're a mayor or on council.
Yeah.
So, the federal government has had campaigned to reduce development charges by half, I think, which I assume is meaning that they would take over some of that infrastructure financing, perhaps. Saw some good ideas, like, in the US, they have tax advantage municipal bonds. Like if we have in BC, obviously municipalities are a lot smaller, but they have pooled borrowing ability in BC with like pooled municipalities. Why not allow tax-free interest on municipal bonds to fund infrastructure? It would involve the federal government allowing that interest deduction, or the interest-free income, tax-free interest income. But we need to get way more creative. If that's one of the major stumbling blocks, then we need to get super, way more creative about how we're going to finance it.
Yeah.
And why not? And you're tapping an investor base, and everyone wins.
That's what I mean. Even talking about like the way like rental properties and capital gains in the US, like even allowing people to take their profits and not get to bring it into other projects, where people nowadays are just selling like, well, I'm not going to put this back into something. I'm going to get taxed at 53%. I'm just no.
Yeah. Was it the capital cost, the recapture or whatever it is? Yeah. We've been lobbying about that for as long as I've been here, so almost 20 years, and it's such a no-brainer to just allow people to roll over those gains into new. And they're saying like, I'm gonna reinvest it in a new apartment building, whatever. just allow it. I don't understand. I don't understand it. It seems like such an easy win.
Yeah, just even like on the real estate investing side, like what we get to see, like we help a lot of companies here get funds and then go buy in the US. I mean, the way you even get to depreciate a building, like the tax benefits compared to Canada and US, like there is no questions the power that they get. And that's why
Yeah.
people taking money from here and be like, well, why would I go invest in a multifamily building in Canada when I can do it in US and I can bring my income down by 200,000?
Yeah. Well, I guess here we're going to bring back what was the MERB program from the 70s or something like it, where individual investors will be allowed to write off investments in Canadian assets, I guess, against their regular business income or something. I'm not totally clear on the details, but tapping a larger investor base to fund things like, apartment buildings.
Yeah, we need to incentivize people somewhere, and business owners, like, hey, a lot of people do have money just sitting in the bank because they're like, well, I'm just going to keep it here. I'm not going to invest it. For one, like as a business owner, if you invest in something, a REIT, and you get passive income, boom, you've now gone past your 50% passive income. And now you're like, well, why would I do that? I'm going to get taxed more money. It's like, hey, if you were to take money and invest it into like either like the municipality, like you said, Brendan, or into like apartments, it's like, hey, we're going to give you a tax break. That like
Yep.
that's where they could actually give money out, and like, hey, it was money that never existed for you before. So hey, it's not like you need to count it. You're now getting profits out there.
Yeah, so I'm optimistic, I guess, in the federal budget that maybe we'll see some of that. They've certainly had a platform for housing that had some creative solutions. So we'll see what they roll out. Hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'm going to segue to the next thing. Speaking of federal, so Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, she proposed a pipeline running through BC, of course, to enable global trade of Alberta's oil and gas. Now, we know David Eby is not supporting it, but I mean, we all know that provinces don't have the authority to greenlight it. It's actually a federal thing. So if Carney wants it, it'll happen. What do you think is stopping our Liberal government from just making it happen?
I don't know. I'm not my area of expertise, but also isn't this the pipeline that actually no private sector investors want either?
Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that the issue? Like if we're to build a pipeline, but then who actually wants it? Is there the demand for that
Yeah, I
pipeline?
mean,
Was the
I
issue.
saw like the CEO of the Trans Mountain Pipeline came out and was like pretty much telling the government, which I mean, Trans Mountain's owned by the government, and they're like, hey, like before you think about installing a new pipeline, how about we get all the ones that we do have like going at a really good speed? Like there's more pipelines, and let's get
Right.
that stuff out there. I mean, we haven't like I think they're at like 30% capacity. And so it's like, well, why don't we
Yeah.
start
It doesn't
getting
seem like
stuff
we need
running properly?
that capacity anyway. In general, if the private sector is not interested in investing in it, then is it a good project?
Yeah. I mean, the government had the Kinder Morgan was going to invest in it back in the day at like, what was it? I think $6 billion. And then the government bought it for 11. And I think it actually cost like 20.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Is that
Sure,
answer?
yeah, no, it's all good. We just want your take on it because we're going to talk about it anyway.
Okay.
Now, this most recently, this has been floating around in the news, is that the Chinese ambassador said that if we remove the tariffs on EVs, they'll remove tariffs on on canola.
No,
And we've long talked about, man, if we have the Chinese EVs here, like the BYD vehicles, they cost like what, 20 grand or something. That'd be amazing. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it could benefit our economies and
I-
such?
I wouldn't give the benefit of the doubt to the Chinese government on anything. Generally what they do is try like with this is massively subsidize a sector to steal market share, right? So that's all they're doing with BYD is massively subsidizing their EV sector and then wanting to dump those cars onto the North American market to steal market share from all of from the North American auto sector and European auto sector. Might be a great car, no idea, but this is exactly what they do in every sector. Sometimes they'll invite like tech companies in, steal their technology, kick them out. That's what they do in their own country. They did it with shoot, what was it? Was it Amazon? They anyway. Um,
Oh, yeah, they have a couple. They got, I mean, Timu is one that they're
yeah.
steady what was it out there. I mean,
So
I think they lose money on everything that they send out right now.
right. So, if it's not like we're dealing with a normal, this is like a state actor with a specific, goal. And would it help Canadian consumers? And maybe for the short term, and then what, right? We decimate our own auto sector.
Yeah,
Then
that's the
where are we
problem. I
at?
mean, like again, it's going to go back to the very problem that we have today is manufacturing and everything. Most of it is it's not done in Canada anymore, and that's where if we start buying everything from there, it's like, well, we're just not going to do anything, and we're just going to buy everything from China. And how are people going to make an income in Canada?
This looks like a cool car though, at least from the from the YouTube videos. But maybe not as if your choice is like ethically Tesla or BYD, I'm not sure which is worse. I say that as a Tesla driver.
Do you have the Did you put the sticker on it?
Of course, I'm doing my part. I'm fighting the fight.
Yeah, like I bought this car before Elon got crazy.
Yeah.
Now this is a big one, and obviously we can see how we want to talk about it, but it is a very interesting one to see what your take is on there, Brendan. But obviously we know like there's some Supreme Court rulings right now with First Nations land specifically in the Vancouver area. And with them saying that they're like the government or well the legal ruling is that it's actually the First Nations land. Now, does this completely undermine what fee simple means? Like, do we actually own the land that we've purchased?
Yeah, again, way out of my area of expertise. I understand like the government has stepped in. It's gonna be a long process. I'm sure there's extreme opinions on all sides, but I think we just need to wait for them to figure out hash out what all of the realities are, and no comment otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it is a hard one. I mean, I agree in some cases. To me, like some land 100% is belonging to the First Nations. The scariest thing is just precedent in the court system. And when something becomes precedent, then it's very easy. That's why people always ask me, why is like financing and even getting funds harder in Canada than in the US? I'm like, well, it is much harder to sue in Canada. In the US, like, hey, you screw me, I'm going to sue you instantly. It's much harder to sue here, but when precedent's set, well, then that's when everyone starts come crawling, and every legal firm out there is going to be on the hound.
Yeah, Alex and I were talking in previous pods, like, man, if the whole thing about the east of Richmond and Haida Gwaii, like, then it's essentially if it's able to put through, it's going to be like like Tawasin, where you're buying leasehold land, right? And then doing 99-year leases. I mean, there is kind of a stigma behind it in the real estate side where people tend to shy away from it. Like it's not as attractive as regular fee simple land, but yeah, it's one of those things where
I mean, like, should that stigmatism like go away? Like, I mean, like, really, what is the difference? Like, to me, like we've made the stigmatism, but it's like, hey, I mean, for one, that house may not even be there in 100 years. Like, that's why I feel like we've made it such a ugly thing. And one, banks don't like to lend on them. It's hard to get financing, but I think that would probably be a way of maybe we should get better at doing that.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine lives on I think 110-year lease on a Indigenous development. It's great. There's you had no trouble as far as I know getting a mortgage, and yeah.
The one I'm on the island there, Brendan, and my parents own up at Mount Washington, and it's pretty funny. You've got leasehold properties in the condo apartment, and then you got fee simple, and it's like, well,
Same.
so what are they just going to get rid of the leasehold when that comes up and be like, you guys don't get your apartments anymore, but these people get to keep theirs? Like, it's just a very silly system.
Yeah, so we'll see how that all comes out, but there's lots of time, and there'll be lots of arguments, and we'll see what happens.
Well, Brendon, what's your take? Like OSFI, for those who are listening, that's our governing body for banking in mortgages there. They've kind of leaked out possibilities of making changes to make it, for people harder to buy rental properties. What's your take on it? Do you think it's going to fly, or is it going to hurt the market? Like,
Was this the not allowing you to use your income twice?
double dipping?
The news promoted it very wrong up front. Like
Yeah.
stuff that was going out was so I mean I saw a lot of mortgage brokers posting it. To me it was fear, like it was fear based.
Yeah.
Like buy your rental property today, you're not going to be able to get one. It's like whoa, like we're reading into this wrong. They're going to be a bit stricter, and it's really on the capital allowances for the lender. Like they have to be more diligent on putting the
That's
funds.
the way I read it as well. Yeah. No, so I mean, like most of these things, I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact. I'd like to see them do something to encourage or well, yeah, like to make it easier for people to get into the ownership market. Specifically, I would love to see them drop the 200 basis point buffer on the stress test and just have
Amen to that, brother. Amen.
yeah, have contract rate or minimum qualifying rate. Like if it's over 525, just qualify you at that rate. I don't understand why right now we're qualifying people, at 6.5 instead of just qualify them at 5.25. That would make a huge difference right now. It would make a huge difference for affordability. I don't understand, or at least for access to the market.
And even do it this way, like do it like, hey, if you're a first-time home buyer, you get this. But hey, if you own multiple properties, hey, yes, we're going to stress test you because hey, your risk tolerance, you have more of a risky book. But like, hey, if a person that's buying one property, hey, you know what? This is the bonus you get by only owing one property.
And the other thing I'd like to see them do is once you're qualified at the stress test rate, pick your own amortization up to something that makes sense. But like if we can qualify, you've already shown that you're financially you can make those payments. Then it's a cash flow budgeting issue. If I want a 35-year amortization, allow me to do that. Like it should be up to you. If you've already satisfied that you can pay a much higher rate, then let me structure that agreement how it fits my family best, or between me and the bank, right? Like why if the bank agrees to it, why does the government need to step in and say you can't do that?
Yeah, I'm interested to see.
It's, I mean, we never really fully talked about the 50-year amortizations there, but like in your case, do you think like in some cases for some it might be like, do you think that would have any effect on affordability, like directly for home prices?
Yeah, I mean, so someone can qualify in a very large mortgage at 25 years and the stress test rate, and then they want to stretch to 50. If there's a lender that says, yeah, sure, I'll take that 50 years.
Yeah.
I don't think that exists. I mean, some of this is within the bounds of like what our own financial markets will accept. And like, there's a risk.
Well, yeah, like quick math for people. If let's use 100,000 for income, if someone has 100,000, we're going to make the stress test 5.25. That's where we're going to force it. With that income to normal ratios, 39% GDS, they'd qualify for a mortgage of 513,000. If we increased it to a 50-year amortization, it goes up to 600,000. So I mean, it's almost a $90,000 increase in buying power. Which that is the only problem I have with it is like we're kind of just putting a band-aid fix on like the affordability. Like we're not making stuff more affordable.
So
we're just making.
In this case, I wouldn't actually allow the extra mortgage. It would just be like you've approved at this amount, and then stretch it, right?
Yeah, and that would be nice. But I mean,
I don't think any banks are do 50, but I'm sure they would do 30 or 35.
Yeah, I think with any change, it's natural. If we jump from 30 to 50, I love Dustin. Dustin's great. We actually met him last week at an industry event. But yeah, optically, I think people adjust to change slowly. So maybe you have to start out at the 35 or the 40 before even considering those kind of things.
But at least, I mean, on the qualifying side, like again, why are we qualifying people right now at 6.5? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, in our cases too.
And I get talking to some older folks that are like downsizing and stuff, and they're like, "Well, hey, I'm 75. Am I only allowed like a 15-year amortization?" I'm like, "No, you get to take whatever you want. Like there is no age discrepancy. You can take a 30-year if you want. That's up to you." And that's where like they get a better flexibility than someone younger. Someone younger might say, "Oh, I'm fine with having debt for 50 years. I don't care about that."
I know a fair number of people, especially in a market like Vancouver, who like it's generational change where they don't expect to pay off their mortgage.
Yeah.
They have these enormous, $1 million mortgages that they can service fine. Often they'll have a basement suite or whatever. they're not going to pay off their mortgage. Like eventually they'll just sell the house. It's a really different mindset. Like I'm still of the mindset like, oh, I can't wait till my mortgage is paid off. But there are many people who are more on like a monthly payment kind of mindset and no plans to pay out. The mortgage is so large that it would be kind of silly to pay it off in the first place.
Yeah, I talked to Alex about this a few weeks ago. Gone are the days where my parents paid off their mortgage, late 40s. I'm in my late 40s and I am nowhere close to paying off my mortgage. My only way to pay off my mortgage is wait for my inheritance and downsize. That's the only way to pay off, is just uncleave of the debt and just live in a condo.
Sell your house, Alex, and you move to the island, and you can get you could probably buy a place free and clear.
Yeah.
That's true. Or then wait a month for Amazon Prime and have buffering Zoom calls like we are having.
No, exactly. There's pros and cons.
Absolutely. Brendon, before we wrap up, one final question for you. If there is no government intervention, what's the outlook of the BC real estate market in the next 18 to 24 months? Is it going to get worse before things get better?
I think, again, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I think we get at least one more rate cut from the Bank of Canada and maybe two. I think for the 5-year fixed rate should end this year around 4.25 for an uninsured. If we get sub 4, I think that could really charge up the market, but we'll see. So I'm optimistic. There's some real economic headwinds still, like uncertainty is out there, but it's fading. But when things can change with one 2 a.m, all caps social media post about tariffs on China or whatever happens to come into his brain, like that's going to create some volatility. And I'm guessing we're going to have some volatility over the next year. We'll probably get a renegotiation of our free trade agreement with the United States in 2026. We'll see how that goes, what the consequences are. But generally, we see the housing market cycle kind of leads the rest of the business cycle. So if the economy is softening, we tend to see, as we've seen the past year, a much softer housing market, and then it recovers faster as well. And it's super interest rate sensitive. Like even now, with the one rate cut from the Bank of Canada and expectations for more, we're seeing like a market like Vancouver, which had been quite weak, jump at least for the first 15 days in October. We're seeing a much better sales activity. So I'm optimistic for 2026 that we're going to have something that looks a little more normal. But again, lots of uncertainty and lots of volatility that is sort of unavoidable. But I think reasonably optimistic that we'll have a better 2026.
Yeah, it depends on the area. Like where I'm at on the island.
Yeah, the island's good.
We've been gangbusters over here. Like it's been nuts.
Yeah. So outside outside the Lower Mainland, basically things are already back to where they were at the end of last year. So back to at or a little bit above where we finished 2024. So anywhere outside of Metro Vancouver is already pretty strong, and like Vancouver Island's one, but like the north is in its own kind of bubble of information where like I'm not sure they've even heard about tariffs yet, because that market's doing great and so is the Kootenay. It's just the more expensive markets are the ones that have struggled the most. I mean, makes sense. Uncertainty tends to amplify the already like burden of like, well, this is a huge financial commitment to buy an apartment in Vancouver at $800,000. So but we're seeing Metro Vancouver come back too, and the rest of the market, rest of the province is already there.
That's been amazing. Yeah, I've even noticed on my end. I'm in Metro Vancouver, and I've noticed too that buyers are starting to jump off the fence a little bit. Although if you're a seller, you're still going to struggle a little bit, but there's more action I'm seeing now.
It's interesting though. Maybe some of this might be why we're seeing buyers come off now. The rates are coming down. Maybe expectations the market's going to pick up, but like prices have been so resilient. Sellers just aren't really moving much. If you look at like, especially like apartment prices, since 2022, when prices peaked, at least when they peaked in Toronto, prices in Toronto are down like 22% from their peak, and apartment prices in Vancouver since 2022 are down like 1.5%.
Wow.
Like they've just been flat. They actually peaked in 2024, so they're down a little bit from the Vancouver peak. but they're still higher than they were, or about where they were in 2022. So
Yeah.
very different markets, super resilient. Average prices have been pretty flat too, and they're actually back up to close to 1.3 million halfway through October in Vancouver, mostly because single detached, that market's come back this month. But yeah, prices just aren't moving. So
Yeah,
you know,
people are willing to wait to draw to have that discount on the sale price, and the buyers are like, I'm not paying at this price because my monthly.
they've already been waiting, and prices aren't coming down. So maybe the net now is they're going to get back in as rates fall.
Yeah, perfect. Great, Brendon. This has been great. Where can we find you?
You can find me on our website where we publish all of our research and stats and everything else. Otherwise, you can follow me on LinkedIn where I post mostly charts and whatnot, or on Blue Sky where I basically only post about how awesome the Mariners and Seahawks are and powerlifting progress. But other than that, basically no economics on my Blue Sky.
Awesome. All right, folks. This has been Brendon Ogmundson, Chief Economist of the BC Real Estate Association. Brendon, thanks for joining us. Folks, we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. You can even send us an email because we want to know what you guys want to hear about. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.